Here's the thing. This is the problem. It was that there was no precedent. There was no lead up to it. There was no implication of this until it just happened. Like, and here's another thing too. This is another reason why I think a lot of people are really pissed off, and I think justifiably so.
You're listening to the GWNL-Podcast. Guys with no lives talking about audio.
All right, and welcome to a special episode from Guys with No Lives. I can't believe right before I started this, Brian's like, recording in progress, because we do this through Zoom every week. So we have a special episode. As many people are now very much aware of in the audio community, Waves did a big thing. They did us all dirty in not the first time, but definitely probably going to be one of the last times. The way that things are shaping up, holy cow!
Honestly, the industry's probably headed this way anyway, and so if anything, Waves are pioneers. But still, so Waves has moved away from their perpetual licenses and has moved to a subscription only. Waves was already a part subscription based model because you had to pay for updates, but you were capped at your update plan when you were capped to like $250 or something like that. Whereas now, instead of just doing that every couple of years or so, if you want all their plugins, it's $250 a year, or you can get essentially what's like their gold bundle for $150 a year, or you can do monthly. Was it like $15 a month and then $25 a month?
Yeah. It was like $14.99 and $24.99. Yeah. Exactly.
Kind of the way that they rolled it out was, it could have been done better.
Shady.
Not just shady.
At
oh
best.
my god. Okay. So like, I have things to say. Okay, so like I work with a lot of software nerds. I come from the computer side of technology and audio specifically, even though I'm the live sound guy and I don't like mix in the box all day long, technically. But so here's some things to consider. First and foremost, I want to say this because I'm about to piss off a lot of people with the way I'm going to talk tonight. Jake's like already kind of like, come on, kill him.
Squaring up.
Yeah. So I personally think that what Waves did was stupid from a business standpoint and from a financial standpoint. But I'm going to do my best to explain kind of what's going on. As my take is, I'm not a software developer, one. I am not necessarily the same type of business owner. I don't deal with the same thing. But I have a lot of business, small business experience, and I have a lot of business perspective about these things. And I understand a lot of the technology side of things and how that kind of influences how businesses make decisions. I also come from a family of loser engineers that are all mechanical, manufacturing, electrical, and nerdy engineers who have constantly fought against finance people. So to sum up what I think, Waves was stupid. They should have done at least what Avid had done, where they said, we're going to do a year of perpetual licenses and then we're going to completely shift over to a subscription base instead of just pulling the rug out under everybody. That's what happened. They just said, nope, we're 100% subscription, deal with it. Suckers, and I'm kind of not surprised because of Waves, but let me explain some of the software stuff going on behind it before we get into some other hot takes. When you're developing software, think about this for a second. You're not going to want to put yourself in Wave's shoes. The only time they make money as a company is when somebody purchases a plugin, updates that plugin, or transfers that plugin to another person. Now, for somebody to transfer a plugin to another person, they have to update their plugins to the current version, and then they have to pay a transfer fee to transfer that license from person A to person B, which means the only time those developers get paid for the software that they work on is purchasing, transferring, and updates. Those are the three ways that Waves can essentially make money. We're excluding things like hardware sales because that's a completely different... it's kind of involved, and because it's a larger company, they can kind of do that.
I would argue that software sales is in the same ballpark as hardware sales.
Originally, but there's more to it, and I want to get into that.
There's this shift that's going on where everybody's going subscription-based models, software as a service or software as a subscription.
Exactly, and that's a big deal because most software development companies, and I know this from like the video game world because I'm a big gamer as well as like audio and stuff like that. Video games now are perceived as a service, and audio software and most software is now perceived as a service. And in their minds, it makes more sense to have a consistent monthly paycheck to pay their developers to manufacture and maintain functionality, updates, and security for their products that they offer, because they're no longer products now, they're perceived as services. It's like instead of you buying CLA plugins, you're now buying the service that CLA plugins are, or in this case, the service that the Waves Gold bundle is. So with that transition means that it's more consistent to pay their developers monthly. The way that Waves had done things was so that they could, in my mind at least, perceiving this, to consistently pay their software developers to maintain security, functionality, and consistency with their own plugin and software products. So this transition to subscription ultimately means a couple of things. It shifts their perspective as a development company from how can we nickel and dime our customer base? Because think about it. They charge you to update every year. They charge you just to transfer your plugins. I was going to buy plugins from a friend of mine at work, but you have to. He had to pay so much money. It would be cheaper for me to just buy them directly from Waves.
I stopped using my Waves plugins when I got my new M1 Mac Mini and went to go install my Waves plugins, and I couldn't because I had to update to the latest one. And I was like, I paid $250 for these plugins. I'm not going to pay $250 again just to update for the same plugins. And so I actually don't use Waves anymore because of that. I think they have some awesome plugins, and I love some of their plugins, but I just had that happen to me, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to pay twice for software that I already bought.
All right, I'm going to wrap up my thoughts really quick, and then I want to hear Jake, because we have been talking around. Yeah. He already has to hear us talk every week anyways. So with that, their shift as a company shifts from now how can we nickel and dime our company to, or our customer base to, all right, now we have a consistent payroll so we can consistently update these things as necessary for security and other things like that, which in a lot of ways actually ends up being better for the customer in a lot of ways. And that's one of the reasons why software as a service has become more and more prevalent, because it makes more sense for those companies to maintain their employee base. With that being said, I think they are dumb. I have thought they are dumb, not because they added subscription, but because they got rid of everything instantly. All right, I want to hear your thoughts, Jake. We've talked a lot.
Sorry, I have one thing that I want to add to that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it'll be better from a business standpoint because they'll be able to pay their employees and they'll be able to maintain and like do security updates and everything they need to maintain their software more regularly. I would like to counterpoint Avid.
Oh, I know.
Every single update that is put out is like they present it as if it's like this groundbreaking update, when it's like, you realize that like Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Ableton, even freaking Bitwig probably, Reaper. It's like they already have that functionality and have had that functionality for like years or months,
almost a decade actually.
Yeah, and it seems like Pro Tools is always the last one to be supported on the latest operating system when Apple updates their operating system, because they come out with a new one like every freaking two new operating systems every freaking year or something. Freaking Apple.
That's another problem.
But
all right, Jake,
anyway,
what are your thoughts,
Jake, let's hear it.
I want to hear you.
Okay.
You're still a Waves guy.
So I guess I should probably like introduce myself a little bit.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
Oh yeah. By the way, this is Jacob. He's the guy that edits all of our podcasts.
Yeah.
We talk about him.
Ben is gone. He's with his kids. They're out of school. So
they're all dying in cancer and dying. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So the main point that Ben wanted to make for this video, he texted it to me, is said my Waves update plan for all of the Waves plugins was more than $300 per year. It's like, so $250 a year is cheaper for him. As somebody who like still uses a lot of Waves, like I feel screwed over, honestly, like to put it bluntly. I think it was a dirty move that they did. If they could have given some warning about like the subscription where it's like, hey, update one last time, and then we're going to move to subscription, that would have been better than what they just did, where it's like, hey, we're moving to subscription. You can't update anymore. Plugins you have eventually are going to time out, so you can't use them even though you own them. And so like going off of what you said, Joe, about like how they're viewing audio plugins as like a service instead of a product. It's like, okay, that I guess in the future after their subscription plan that makes sense, but it's like, what about those of us who already own the product? You know? And it's like, I don't want to have to rent my audio software, because what if there comes a time of, you know, like feast or famine? What if there's a time of famine and then I can't use those tools anymore? And then it's like all the projects that I've used those tools on are screwed because I can't, you know, I can't open my mixes and have all the plugin chains there. So I don't know. From a business standpoint, I think like it definitely makes sense. Like if I was one of the shareholders or something in Waves, like I'd be all for this, you know, to put more money in my pockets. But like in the end, it's like they're just looking out for themselves. They're not looking out for the customer. I don't really feel like they did any market research beforehand. It's like, even if you go on the YouTube video that I screenshot, I sent it to you guys, you know, like talking about it. And like even on the YouTube video announcing it, it has like, last I checked, it had like over 20,000 views and like 200 likes on it.
Pulling it up right
and
now.
then
I
like,
just want to look at this.
Yeah, it had a ton of comments of like frustrated people. Yeah.
Yo, Reddit. Oh my gosh. I have never seen like, I mean, it's Reddit, so like take it with a grain of salt. But boy, when I hopped on Reddit and I saw that, I was like, boy, this is spicy meatball. Here's the thing. This is the problem. It was that there was no precedent. There was no lead up to it. There was no implication of this until it just happened. Like, and here's another thing too. This is another reason why I think a lot of people are really pissed off, and I think justifiably so. One, it came out of nowhere. Two, audio engineers are used to, in general, like owning their equipment. Like, yeah, you might rent to own something, but like your microphone, you own. Your preamp, you own. Your compressor, you own. And let's be honest, those are the same analogs. Like all of those things are just software form.
Yep.
Right? And like in this case, and like then it starts to become this bigger question, like, okay, well, what's next, Wave? So you've done that. Well, what about like Wave Sound Grid, or they're like Wave Sound servers? Like, are those going to be now subscription based? I mean, now it essentially is a subscription based gear.
For the plugins, absolutely, yeah. For the plugins, it will be. But like, I guess the big argument, which we've kind of touched on already, is software a product or is it a service? And I personally think that software is a product. I think even though it's not a physical, tangible thing that you can hold, you know, when you buy a product, it's like you have that. I'm like, it's not like Netflix where they're legit like filming their own stuff, and
that's a whole nother bag of worms. Yo, man.
But like, you know, it's not like where you have to like keep curating like content and stuff, and you're not providing content for people. You're providing tools for audio professionals.
I agree.
And then
you look at Adobe though.
Well, yeah, but then also the other argument that can be made though is, okay, maybe the software in and of itself is a product and so should be sold as like a perpetual license, but from that point on, you know, you bought it as is. Well, you bought it that way. When you buy hardware, you don't necessarily get hardware updates. I mean, some companies do, depending on what type of hardware it is. But
yeah, RMV, you rock.
If you look like preamps or EQs, it's like, how do you update a preamp? That's just called servicing it.
Yeah.
Go on.
So
to keep plugins and software and stuff up to date, you could argue that is the service.
Yeah.
But so I have something I need to say, and I think this is an important thing to make. I think Waves 100% knew they were gonna kind of kick the hornet's nest. I do. I really do. I don't think they would have lacked the business strategy planning to not understand that they were going to piss off some people. I don't think they realized how big a hornet's nest they were going to kick when they made that announcement. I think there was probably in some boardroom at Waves HQ where they had a conversation between the engineers, the software developers, and the finance people, as well as maybe some of the CEO and the chief executives. And what happened was there might have been some fighting from the software developer side of things against the finance people. But I bet you what happened was the finance people basically said, with the lawyers on their side or whatever, and this is a bigger thing. Yes, we're going to piss some people off, but this is the future of how these things are going to go. And here's another reason why they can get away with doing this. With a lot of the live shows that have millions of dollars invested in this equipment, they're kind of screwing the small guy in this instance, because bigger companies, because most avid SXLs, and I had never, in all the years that I've done live sound with big companies and other stuff, it was always an Avid SXL with a Wave sound grid, with like the platinum, like I can't remember, like the Mercury edition of like literally every Waves plugin that ever existed, right? And that is just how almost every single time, like Avid and Waves kind of go hand in hand as far as like being used in the live sound world in that setting. Yeah. So to these companies that already blew like $8,000 on like the full package or whatever of Waves equipment, software, and plugins, they're thinking, oh, I only have to pay like $25 a month or $250 a month. And think about this.
You do that. You go on a 3-month tour. You pay for 3 months of the subscription, $75.
Now they're going to pay the full year for that 3 months easy and still have money left over.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. They knew they were going to rock the boat. I don't think they realized how much, but I think they said, we don't care. We have enough. We like kind of like Avid does often. Yeah, but we're the industry standard. So
yeah,
whatever.
Well, especially when they have like big names like endorsing some of their plugins.
Yeah.
Like plugins named after Chris Lord-Alge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
the Shep's Omni channel.
Yeah. Touching back on like something that a point that one of you guys made is like talking about like owning your tools versus renting them. And like, I guess like a good comparison is like, we've all rented an apartment before. It kind of sucks because like the landlord at any moment could come in and like, rip the rug out from under your feet or, take advantage of you. And that's like exactly how this feels, where it's like, you're never going to own Waves plugins again. I mean, I guess maybe that's an exaggeration because we still own the old plugins. We just can't update them anymore. Yeah. But yeah, like I think that's one of the most upsetting things for me personally, how it's like, I don't want to rent anything. Just want to own it,
Yeah.
I mean, heck, even Serum will allow you to rent to own a lot of plugins and stuff. Yeah. I mean, Plugin Alliance will allow you to do a subscription yearly for about the same cost, and you get to pick 10 plugins that you just get to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This is why I struggle with it. Like, I don't know. I think it's a dumb idea on Wave's part, but they're like, oh, well, we're the future, and now we're going to force everyone into the future. And it's like, bro, chill out.
The idea of a subscription itself, I'm not against. It's just the subscription only. It's like they're trying to strong arm us into subscribing and like continuously giving them money, which like those of us who are just like bedroom producers or who aren't doing it full time or hobbyists even, it's like they can't afford that. Right. And especially if, like your DAW moves to subscription plan, if maybe another plugin company you like that you're subscribed to, like Slate Digital or something, or Plugin Alliance, like Joe was saying, it's like all of that adds up eventually. And it sucks to go from spending $0 a month to spending, $50, $100, maybe even $200. I mean, depending on how many subscriptions you have. But
the reason I switched from Pro Tools, like I'm like working on my Pro Tools user certification and stuff like that. The reason I switched from Pro Tools is I'm not a studio, 1. 2, for 2 months of a Pro Tools standard subscription, I could pay for Reaper. And I just said to myself, all right, well, I don't really work as a studio. I work in live and I don't really need a full studio suite. And don't get me wrong, I like Pro Tools, but Reaper's good enough for like 2 months of a subscription. I already pay $30 a month for plugins that I use, and then I'd have to pay another $30. I'm paying $60 a month as a dude who just like mixes on a console anyways. I can't justify blowing that much money, especially when my work isn't paying for it either, and that's a whole nightmare. Like, I can't justify that. I can justify the 2 plugin subscriptions, but then that on top of Pro Tools, and then now look at this. Like, people now have to do that with Waves. Suddenly, like you were saying, like $100 a month. That's a Pro Tools Ultimate subscription, bro. Like,
Yeah. One of the things that I initially thought was cool. There's 2 different plans that are offered. Mm-hmm. I already think there's way too many plugins available in the gold bundle as is. As someone that has a crap ton of plugins, I gravitate towards like the same like 3 or 4 plugins, like 95% of the time. I'll use the same 2 EQs, the same 2 or 3 compressors, and I don't really use much else than that aside from some reverb plugins. But basically on my channels, on my channel strip, I'll have an EQ and a compressor, and then I'll use that same EQ and compressor basically like you would if you had a console. And so I'm not like really interested in like continually gumming up my search
workflow.
Yeah. Because I just think there's so many plugins that are available from Waves in general, and then just getting all of them on a plugin subscription or getting 200 of them on a plugin subscription is like, holy crap, that's a lot of plugins to sort through and learn if you want to learn them all. Like, I mean, I have the Waves Gold Bundle. I never used all the plugins on them, and now I don't use Waves anymore anyway. So that's just kind of some of my thoughts, kind of analysis paralysis with having so many different choices to choose from.
I think one of the struggles that I'm going to say this, and it's going to be kind of like my propheticism of the future. All right. What we're going to see is 2 things. We're going to see an increase in subscription-based plugin services. With Waves doing this is actually a big push for the entire industry in a not good way. 1. 2, I also think that we're going to see a renaissance in people just digging more into the tools that they have available within their DAWs already. Because almost all DAWs come with your compressors, your EQs, some things with some color and saturation. Most of the tools that we use, there are going to be some specialty tools. I think Isotope will maintain itself. I think FabFilter will also maintain itself. But I think for the most part, people are going to be digging more into what they own because they're not going to be wanting to be willing to drop such a consistent large chunk of change on a bunch of things that they're not going to need, because now that's all they have available if this is the way of the future.
Yeah.
To add to that, and I brought this up in our text chat, I think that, because I had this reaction, but I think that maybe people will start to invest a little more in analog outboard gear, because like my reaction was like, okay, how can I make sure I never get taken advantage of again by software company? It's like, get hardware, So I could see that happening. It's definitely a very expensive alternative, but
you asked the same question. How much less expensive is it than paying for 3 years of Waves?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what is it? A distressor is like about $1,200.
Yeah, that's like 5 years of Waves.
Yeah, but that's not going to be that's not going out of style. Like a 2-way is not going to not be used 10 years from now.
True. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you look at it, like this is why when I bought my Pro instrument that I bought, I spent like $3,000 on it. That thing's gonna outlast every car I own. I can pass it on to my kid, and he'll still be able to play it, and it'll still be great.
Yeah.
Same thing with a 2-way, with a distressor, with like literally any software or hardware you get.
True. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways.
Oh man. Cool. Well,
we did it.
mix good.